going on, everybody? It's your buddy, it's your pal Spaz Phoenix, the YWC Reality Check, running solo today to talk to you about the Survivor Series. Yes, for those of you that have been following me a long time, every couple of years or so I come up and talk to you guys about the Survivor Series, because it's a very unique pay-per-view to talk about. Not that it's the most... it's not the most anticipated pay-per-view of the year. It's not even... A lot of people are making the argument that it's not even one of the big four anymore. I don't necessarily agree with that, but it is what it is. People, however, for the last, I don't know how long, and it goes back years and years and years, and I've literally made this point before on podcasts, I will never understand the idea that people are, in tight air quotes, sick of the Survivor Series, because my reaction to that has always been that Survivor Series has been the most transformative pay-per-view as far as what it has to offer. If you say you're sick of the Survivor Series, do you mean back in the day when the entire Survivor Series was based on 4-on-4 matches, which were basically two tag teams versus another two tag teams? Do you miss later on down the line when it moved to a 5-on-5 format where it was basically a captain would build a team and another captain would build a team? And they would go at it from there with the very, very similar Survivor Series type matches. Do you miss, are you sick of the Deadly Games tournament that happened all of once, where it was a one-night tournament to crown a new WWE champion? And I know a lot of people have a lot of mixed feelings about that one. Do you miss, when it was just the name of the pay-per-view and it was like generic pay-per-view number 5? Right now it's the War Games, but right before it became War Games, we had something that fell under a lot of scrutiny, a lot of mockery, a lot of, this isn't, this is just cookie cutter, it kind of gets in the way. Very, very similar, and this is not a dig at AEW for once, coming from me. It's very, very similar in the way that AEW fans would talk about the Forbidden Door, because they kind of had to drop their stories on the fly to make a match with somebody from New Japan or from CMLL or wherever, and then hop back into their stories afterwards, after the pay-per-view had passed or whatever. The Battle of the Brands version of the Survivor Series was one that always fell under that same scrutiny. It was just, red shirt, blue shirt, and it's just like, okay, yeah, but people team up all the time. Now, I don't want to assuage the current version of the Survivor Series being War Games and all, but I do think we are in a period of time and in a position where you could do Battle of the Brands properly. You could give it a new life, a new lick of paint, etc., and not necessarily treat it like Raw versus SmackDown, because Raw versus SmackDown was a two-sided thing. You were red, you were blue, you were whatever. The one year where it got really interesting, where you introduce a different element into the equation, was the one year that they paired it up with NXT. They had the ladies' main event and the triple threat champion versus champion thing, because it introduced something new to the equation. At that time, I had always said, instead of doing Raw versus SmackDown, why don't you do main roster WWE versus NXT? Use it as a platform. Use it as an opportunity to pump NXT into the mainstream conversation. Now, NXT is more into the mainstream conversation now, but there are many other things percolating just under the surface of what we would call main roster WWE, Raw, SmackDown, the people that typically go to Rumble, Mania, Survivor Series, King of the Ring, SummerSlam, etc. So what I want to say is, yes, it's going to be each individual brand working for themselves, but with the subtext of main roster WWE versus everything just under the surface. Now, in this case, I'm going to be saying mostly NXT and TNA, because those are the people that I am most familiar with. If I was more familiar with AAA, other than Mr. Iguana and Psycho Clown, I would include more of that. I don't want to, because I'm not. Same thing goes for somebody like Noah. Same thing goes for something like Marigold. Same thing goes for something like Bloodsport. So in theory, I would want to have everybody that WWE is working with on one team, and then just main roster WWE on the other side, while still saying that, hey, somebody from Bloodsport might have a problem with somebody from NXT, somebody with Raw might have a problem with somebody from SmackDown, but with the additional leverage of, hey, we've got these ones that are not quite main roster and these ones that are main roster. So right now, because of my narrow scope of what I'm familiar with, this is basically going to surround itself around, what was I going to say? It's going to surround itself around NXTNA versus the main roster of WWE. Now, we are going to do the whole champion versus champion versus champion versus champion thing, that old format that we used to talk about. But, as I said, do not let yourselves be fooled that, oh, Spaz has given up on War Games. Spaz, I thought you loved War Games. I do love War Games. So I have thrown 2 random War Games matches together just to get us off onto the right foot. It's not going to be the main portion of the show, but we're still going to have it for the sake of having it. I still want to see the double rings, etc. But what I want to do is show that the brand versus brand, champions versus champions idea can work. Now, it would be very easy for me to say, oh, I wish so-and-so was champion, I wish so-and-so was champion. I would say, oh, put the WWE title on CM Punk, put the TNA title on Mike Santana, and have it be WWE champion versus TNA champion, CM Punk versus Mike Santana. It would be very easy for me to make this fit my mold, make this fit, make a show basically just for me. But because I want to make the case that this can work, I'm literally limiting myself to who the champions are right now when we get to those matches and the individual storytelling opportunities that those lead. But as I said, as a little taster, as a little appetizer, so to speak, to get out of the NXT versus TNA, to get out of the Raw versus SmackDown, to get into the framework that I'm talking about, where it's more like NXTNA versus main roster WWE, I do have 2 War Games matches, and they're kind of random, and they're just for fun. Tell me who you would want on your NXTNA versus main roster WWE War Games matches down in the box below, if you wish. For the men, it's Briggs, Inamura, Joe Hendry, and Mike Santana, because I'm a dickhead, it's fine, versus Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed, JC Mateo, and Solo Sikoa. Now, you might say, why not Jacob Fatu? That's going to become quite obvious later on. Briggs and Inamura are a lot of fun. Joe Hendry is over as hell. Santana's a badass. Put the 4 of them in against 4 brick shithouses and let the fun ensue. Santana's no stranger to a street fight type match. Briggs and Inamura are kind of made for it. I want to see Inamura do that charge up splash thing that he does off the top of the cage. I think that'll be a lot of fun. Breaker, yeah, put him in a cage. That's going to go well. Same thing with Solo. Same thing with Jeff Cobb, JC Mateo. And Bronson Reed literally killed both of his feet the last time he was in War Games. So why not? Now, for the ladies, don't ever fret. I have not forgotten the ladies. I've got Zarya, Jordan Grace, Rosemary, and Killer Kelly. Yes, this is made specifically for me. Versus Rhea Ripley, Bayley, Roxanne Perez, and Kairi Sane. Lots of fun, lots of fun. You get a little bit of David and Goliath in there when you're looking at people like Jordan Grace versus people like Kairi Sane. I think there's a cool story to tell there. Killer Kelly is going to see her friend in a different match that I've got set up momentarily. Killer Kelly versus Bayley would be a lot of fun. The interactions between Rhea Ripley and Zarya have already been teased on NXT before, as have the interactions between Rhea Ripley and Jordan Grace. So Rosemary's just there because I'm the one that made this card. That's literally all we're doing there. But yeah, to do this, to do my pitch here of bringing back Battle of the Brands, it'd be very easy for me to just say Team Raw versus Team SmackDown, Team NXT versus Team TNA, but all those are taking place in the other matches. So I just threw these in there for fun. It's just a bunch of other random people, and you'll notice that I haven't used any champions here, and that it means that the War Games match itself is going to be a showcase for people that need it, rather than a showcase for champions, because champions are already being showcased by the virtue of being champions. So to go over this one more time, Zarya, Jordan Grace, Rosemary, and Killer Kelly taking on Rhea Ripley, Bayley, Roxanne Perez, and Kairi Sane, and Josh Briggs and Yoshiki Inamura, Joe Hendry, and Mike Santana taking on Breaker, Reed, JC Mateo, and Solo Sikoa. Now, as I said, I am going back to the cookie cutter way that they used to do things, where it's just champion versus champion, this, that, and the next. I'm using the champions that we have right now to prove that it doesn't have to be the people that I would 100% handpick just to make this work. So for a men's tag team fatal four-way, you've got the World Tag Team Champions, the New Day, versus the WWE Tag Team Champions, the Street Profits, versus the NXT Tag Team Champions, Hank and Tank, versus the TNA Tag Team Champions in the Nemeth Brothers. Now, lots of cool stories to say here. I've seen both the New Day and the Street Profits both fight the Usos a lot. I'm struggling off the top of my head to pull out a memorable New Day versus Street Profits match. That in and of itself is something to play with. The Nemeths coming over, I mean, Ryan Nemeth is Ryan Nemeth, it's fine. You can do a lot of storytelling with the fact that Dolph Ziggler used to be in WWE. You could have the dickhead heels being like, you're from TNA, and then he could give, Xavier Woods a side eye because he used to be Consequences Creed. And the whole thing about this is you've got the New Day who are dickhead heels. You've got the Street Profits who are not necessarily heels, but they are in that we're still the Street Profits. We know you still like us, but we are trying to be more serious. More serious means less fun, which means a little bit of a heely edge, if nothing else. And you got, like I said, the Nemeths who are just there with something to prove. You could always have that sort of elephant in the room of, hey, WWE kind of got rid of Dolph Ziggler and all that kind of thing. So we're with all these other 6 serious guys, these 6, please take me seriously, doing a little bit of Hangman Page. You throw in the fact that the biggest guys in the match and the guys that have the most to prove because they're the developmental talents, in tight air quotes, in Hank and Tank, and the fact that Hank and Tank are just a lot of fun and they could truck a lot of people. Now, let's just say, for anything else you want to say about these guys, Kofi Kingston and Dolph Ziggler specifically are gonna bump like fucking maniacs for a team like Hank and Tank. It would be a great showcase for the NXT Tag Division, which is... it could use a kick up the ass, not gonna lie. If you listen to the most recent episode of The State of Wrestling with myself and Jake, we did a quite extensive conversation about why the SmackDown Tag Division is killing it right now, and everybody else kind of needs to pull up their bootstraps. So everybody needs to come into this match with something to prove. The Street Profits can come in with like the absolute air of superiority in that regard. New Day are solid. Street Profits are solid. Hank and Tank, I think it would be one of the first times that they've been out in front of a main roster size audience. And I mean, people are going to pop for the return of Dolph Ziggler, aren't they? Now, women's tag teams is a little bit different. It's not going to be a 4-way because WWE only has 1 set of titles and TNA only has 1 set of titles, and that's really all we're dealing with right now. We used to have the NXT ones and they got amalgamated because, Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey needed to have 2 sets of belts, and that was a mistake in my opinion, but we're down to a 2-on-2 match. Here's the fun part about it. You can go 100 different directions with this right now when you consider that the TNA Knockouts Tag Team Champions right now are the Elegance brand, Ash by Elegance and Heather by Elegance, sided to the ring by M by Elegance, and the personal concierge, aka George Iceman, who's a really good dude in real life, so it's funny seeing him play a heel. So you could have interference from the personal concierge, you could have interference from M by Elegance. You might have a little bit of, raucousness among that group, because there's definitely raucousness on the other side. Now, I'm trying to keep this as realistic as possible. When I wrote this down, I just wrote it down as the Judgment Day, because, Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez are the Judgment Day. Liv Morgan being injured. You can tell a really cool story here because Raquel Rodriguez has lost her partner. She has to pair up with Roxanne Perez, who she's not really, going to be chuffed about partnering with to begin with. You could have the people in the Elegance brand, or even, George Iceman on the microphone saying, why is Roxanne Perez even in this match? She's not a real champion. Obviously, discrepancy between the members of the Judgment Day. You could give a really cool win on a big WWE stage to a TNA tag team in the Elegance brand. Ash by Elegance, formerly Dana Brooke, And it's just a happy story with Ash by Elegance anyways, because you guys know I was always pulling for Dana Brooke in WWE. I think WWE insanely dropped the ball. We can talk all we want about the Tony Fumble Rumble and all the talents that we're absorbing from AEW, but we gotta take that same judgmental glare and point it inwards occasionally. There are people like Dana Brooke, like Mustafa Ali, like Dolph Ziggler, like Baron Corbin, like all kinds of people, talk about other people's contracts coming up soon. WWE drops the ball too. Not nearly as often these days, but they do. So seeing Dana Brooke back on WWE television, it's kind of like seeing Elias when Elijah shows up in NXT. It's just like, I know they're there representing TNA, but it is kind of a homecoming. It is kind of a triumphant return. Seeing AJ Francis, same kind of thing. And I know a lot of people have a lot of things to say about AJ Francis as well. Not the best example in the world. I think he's going to be an NXT Tag Team Champion soon, but that's another story for another day. The Elegance brand and the Judgment Day in a women's tag team champions versus tag team sort of champions with Roxanne Perez, with Liv Morgan currently out of the picture. Just bringing those two teams together, those two factions together, would be insane. You got M by Elegance on the outside who could go and bitch slap, I don't know, JD McDonough, and it would be funny because he's got a big head. It's a big target to hit. You could have, at the same time, somebody like Raquel Rodriguez doing a Chincona bomb on George Iceman because he's never scared to make himself look like a dickhead for the purpose of making things look really, really cool. Now, the only match here, I believe, if I'm looking up and down my notes really quickly, the only match here that won't have any TNA involvement is the women's mid-card match of champions, because there is no women's mid-card championship in TNA. Now, they've let the women, because they do intergender wrestling in TNA, which is the credit that I always give them. I wish the other companies would do it. Women have held the X Division or I don't know if they've held the X Division Championship. They've definitely fought for the X Division Championship. When the Digital Media Championship was still a thing, Jordan Grace held that. The World Championship was held by Tessa Blanchard, much to the chagrin of a lot of people out there. But the thing is, for the ladies specifically, there is no mid-card championship on TNA. As of yet. They might change that any given day now. But for right now, what you have is the North American Championship versus the United States Championship versus the Intercontinental Championship, which is Becky Lynch versus Zelina Vega versus Sol Ruca. Now, all the weight of this match entirely would fall on the shoulders of Becky Lynch. Becky Lynch picking up the Intercontinental Championship at this point in her career is lending all of her credence to that belt and everybody that fights her for it. Very much similar to what she did when she went back down to NXT and carried the NXT Championship on Raw with her while she was on Raw. I think that was sort of a soft launch for them having a mid-card title, at least on Raw, because she basically came to Raw and defended it like it was a secondary title. Now, Sol Ruca is awesome. She's not the finished article by any stretch of the imagination. I really enjoy her. The Soul Snatcher is a great finisher. Becky would sell the hell out of it. And Zelina Vega gets way more pelters than she should over certain people that aren't happy about her being a champion, mostly because the former champion was Chelsea Green, and it's not really a fair comparison because Zelina Vega not too long ago stepped away from the LWO and has finally gone on and tried to forge her own way as her own individual character rather than managing everybody. So Sol Ruca and Zelina Vega interacting would be really interesting. I think the charisma, the chemistry is the word I'm looking for. Thank you, brain. Between the two of them would be great. The two of them figuring out that they are underdogs to sort of the elder stateswoman of the division in Becky Lynch could come up with some interesting. Zelina Vega does a lot of Rey Mysterio tribute-esque offense, where Sol Ruca has her very gymnastic style, and like I said, the Soul Snatcher is awesome. Becky Lynch is the kind of wrestler that would go in there and make these two look like $1 million. I don't think anybody loses by losing here, but I would give the win to Sol Ruca because I'm slightly biased towards NXT. I haven't really picked winners here at all. The Knockouts Tag Team Champions can win over a dysfunctional Judgment Day, and I would say maybe a surprise, like sort of an invader type win from the Nemeths in the men's tag match. Now, men's mid-card is where it kind of gets interesting, because we double dip on TNA and every other show only has one representative. So it provides us with another interesting opportunity here, where there is no women's mid-card championship. In TNA, there are two men's mid-card champions in, obviously, X Division Championship and the newly formed International Championship. For those of you that don't know, for those of you that don't follow NXT, or not NXT, TNA, thank you, Brain, they got rid of the Digital Media Championship not that long ago when PCO went to an indie show and smashed it and then left the company, and then they did a weird storyline where he left it to his girlfriend that wasn't really his girlfriend. Steph Delander, there we go. Thank you, Brain, once again. It's tired in here. And then Steph Delander gave it to Mance Warner, and then it was not really a thing anymore. Santino Morello came out, the director of Authority, and discontinued the Digital Media Championship to introduce the International Championship, which is a gorgeous belt, even though the bright blue strap is still something I'm getting used to. Bottom line is, this is the only match where TNA gets to double dip in their representation, because you've got X Division Champion Moose, you've got the International Champion Steve Maclin, along with NXT North American Champion Ethan Page, WWE Intercontinental Champion Dominic Mysterio, and WWE United States Champion Jacob Fatu. Now, all of these people have enemies that we can talk about. I kind of want to leave that aside for this match because I think you've got enough dynamics to play with here that are a lot of fun. Now, the speculation will be that the only show represented by two people instead of one is TNA. Are Moose and Steve Maclin gonna team up for the greater good to represent their show, etc.? But Maclin's a face, Moose is a heel. I don't think it'll necessarily happen. Now, at the same time, you've got Dominic Mysterio and Ethan Page, who are both shit-eating heels, even though people love Dominic Mysterio. So to see the two of them do that very famous thing in wrestling of, strength in numbers, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. You get a little temporary partnership between Ethan Page and Dominic Mysterio because they've got monsters clipping at their heels like Moose, Jacob Fatu, and Steve Maclin. Now, Moose and Fatu are physical monsters. Maclin, I have referred to for a long-ass time as wrestling's version of Frank Castle, the Punisher. So he's more of a mental monster. I hate the wordplay, but it works. Not gonna lie, I'm a big fan of Ethan Page. I'm a big fan of Dominic Mysterio. I'd kind of have Fatu take this just because he's the guy on the rise. Moose is established. Maclin is established in kind of a different way. Ethan Page, he's newer to WWE / NXT, but people know who he is, and he's doing the NXT thing, and he's a really good, same with Dominic Mysterio, to be fair. They're really good shit-eating heels that are good at getting their asses handed to them, much like I said about Iceman earlier in a managerial capacity. But Fatu, basically looking at these guys trying to double team him for an example. They go for a double clothesline and he just kills both of them. And then he looks at Moose and Maclin like two bigger challenges, two bigger snacks, so to speak. Kind of like that smile that you always saw between Big Show and Braun Strowman when they would collide and go head to head. It's not necessarily going to be 5 stars in the Tokyo Dome, brother, but we're going to have some fun. Fatu staring down the double TNA barrel of Maclin and Moose and taking that on as a personal challenge, and then, like I say, eating them for lunch, getting the win here would be absolutely fantastic. As would the 4-way women's championship match of Monday Night Raw, Io Sky, the World Women's Champion, the WWE Women's Champion Tiffany Stratton, the new NXT Women's Champion JC Jane, at least for now. We'll see how that goes at Evolution. Different story, different day. And TNA Knockouts champion Masha Slamovich, or as Ringsider Anthony would say, Masha Slamovich. Shout out to Ringsider Anthony, who knows way more about TNA and covers TNA way better than I do. Go check out all our friends over at the Wrestling for Life Network, and my usual, most of the time, co-host Jake DeMarco at Countdown Ended, because they're all great people, and as you can see currently, I'm really better with a co-host. Io and Tiffany standing on top of the world right now. JC is forever going to be the don't see me as a paper champion. I'm ridiculously happy with what she's doing in NXT right now. If you guys haven't heard any of my other podcasts, Masha Slamovich took the torch from Jordan Grace and she ran with it. As great as they are, as great as the Raw and SmackDown champions are, I don't want to see them lose, but I do want to throw a win Masha Slamovich's way. Masha Slamovich wins this. Once again, you can sort of see where Masha Slamovich was sitting in the audience. She sat in the audience at NXT quite a bit and had her eye on Cora Jade before Cora Jade got her release, but you can believe that she had her eye on other people in division at the same time. She was always, scoping out the competition quietly from the sidelines type of thing, and then obviously some people went over to TNA and had matches with her, Cora Jade being the most prevalent one. But Cora Jade's doing other things now. No judgment. It's fine. But I don't think you lose anything by having Masha Slamovich go over JC Jane, because in pinning JC Jane, she can say that she beat all three of the women's champions in WWE, when WWE's women's division is on a hell of a run at the moment, and TNA could use a little bit of bolstering. The women that they have are great, but it could use some bolstering. It could use some thickening. That's a horrible way for me to say what I'm saying, but I hope you guys get what I mean. But I mean, even on the surface, even before talking about a winner, Io Sky, Tiffany Stratton, JC Jane, and Masha Slamovich is a hell of a match. Maybe twist it up a little bit, make this one a match by elimination, so that it has to be somebody that's pinned all three and survived 2 eliminations or whatever the case may be. Yeah, do that. Make this one a little different. Give the ladies a little bit more time in the ring. Give the ladies match a little bit more time on the card. It's fine. Look at the card I've got, actually. It's almost twice as big as any of the pay-per-views that Triple H has given us this year. It's fine. And then you got the men's. And if you look at the men's, there's also really interesting stories to tell. John Cena is still on his heel run, WWE Championship run, and you want to see him get smacked by literally everybody. So to look at the match the way it would lay out right now and have the potential of Cena getting the ever-loving shit kicked out of him by Gunther, Obafemi, and Trick Williams would be a hell of a shout. Now, there's a very interesting story in here to tell with the fact that TNA will be represented, but will not be represented by a TNA talent. Trick Williams still has the TNA Men's Championship at the moment. He's got a long-standing history with Obafemi. Obafemi versus Gunther is a match that a lot of people have speculated about already. It's one that I want to see, especially when he took on the big fella that just came up from LFG, whose name I can't remember at the moment because I'm terrible. Jasper Troy. There we go. So Oba and Jasper Troy had a hell of a match, and Jasper Troy's like ridiculously new. He's as green as the LFG logo, but it was Oba facing another guy of comparable size and power, etc. So Oba versus Gunther is a match we want to see. Cena versus Gunther is a match that everybody wanted to see until Cena came back, and we didn't want to see Cena at all anymore. Does Travis Scott come out during this match? I don't even know. Trick Williams right now is putting himself together a hell of a faction with Casey Navarro, AJ Francis, Wesley, Tyson DuPont, Tyreek Igwe. Does he come down with all the boys with him? Does Gunther bring back Kaiser for a night? Does Obafemi just go out there and look at all these guys with backup and truck all of them? Does Trick Williams come out with somebody like an AJ Francis and Obafemi trucks him into the 5th row like Keith Lee did to Adam Cole back in the day? Maybe. Does that lead to eventually Obafemi versus AJ Francis, which is just a match I want to look at? The most interesting winner here would be Trick Williams, not only because he would be able to brag over 2 different shows. TNA would, or the members of the TNA roster would have to struggle with the fact that TNA got a win on the back of somebody that's not a TNA guy. I'm going to go with Trick on this. I want to say that Obafemi would kill everybody, but Trick Williams is the more interesting storytelling opportunity there with this one, just because of where we happen to be right now. The other thing about this that I didn't have on the plate at the time, because I wrote the notes for this several days ago before Triple Mania happened. You could technically take that New Day versus Street Profits versus Hank and Tank versus the Nemeths match and throw in the Garzas just to have a little bit of AAA representation with the new AAA Tag Team Champions Los Garzas as well. But my point with all this is saying, and it's just a rule-proving exercise more than anything else, all the champions we have over all the various shows are not necessarily all the people that I would choose to have in those spots right now. Leon Slater's very quickly going to be the X Division champion. I don't know who's going to take the title off Macklin. It's probably going to be Mance Warner. Who takes the title off Jacob Fatu? Maybe it's JC Mateo. Dominic Mysterio's... He's facing AJ Styles in a couple of weeks, guys. Ethan Page is going to lose that title to Ricky Starks eventually. Becky, I think, is going to drop the title to either Bayley or Lyra. Zelina Vega's probably going to end up handing that title back over to Chelsea Green with the way the crowd reaction is going. Sol Ruka is going to get betrayed by Zarya in no short order, so she's going to monster her and take that title for a while. I don't know who is going to unseat the Elegance brand and Judgment Day. I'm getting really terrified that they're going to put those tag titles on the Bellas, and that's going to make me sad. New Day needs a new challenger that's not the War Raiders. Street Profits has a murderer's row of potential challengers, including the Wyatt Six that could give you two entirely different teams because there's 4 of them. Hank and Tank, I don't know what they do. I'm kind of worried that they're going to drop those titles to something like the Culling or Dark State. The Nemeths are probably going to drop those titles back to the Rascals at some point, which would make any match better. The Rascals, now that I think of it, the Rascals versus the Garzas for the AAA tag titles would be an interesting match to see. Anyways, my point in all this, I've kind of turned it into a bit of a ramble. I think that this could work. I think that they could do this properly and they could actually tell interesting stories with it this time rather than people coming out in different colored t-shirts. To prove that, I've given you all the storytelling possibilities just with the champions we have right now. Imagine what you could do with this card, what anybody within the sound of my voice, with it, anybody in the comment section or following me on X at Spaz Phoenix, plug in the champions that you wish were champions right now. I wish Cena would drop the title to CM Punk, but that's not going to happen in Saudi Arabia. Now does that turn into CM Punk versus Gunther versus Oba versus, Mike Santana? Do we have the exact same match with brand new players? Maybe. Now, when I learn more about AAA, when I learn more about LFG and the stars in the ID program, and maybe some people from Noah, maybe some people from Bloodsport, all the other people that WWE is working with now, does that make this go ridiculously wildly off in all directions because you bring in more champions, more conflicts, more combinations of people? Absolutely. Anyways, my point is, you can do Battle of the Brands. You can do it properly. You can do it without losing War Games, which was my other big point here. It's not a dead idea. It's not a dead concept. It's a concept that never really got a chance to live. It got to live once a little bit. And why did it get to live once a little bit? Because they had the infusion of NXT. Now you've got TNA. Now you've got all these other people to play with. AAA, Bloodsport, like I say, Noah and all that. You've got the working relationship with TNA. Have some fun with this. Have it be not Forbidden Door. Because, no. It's not forbidden. That's why the name Forbidden Door doesn't work. Worlds Collide was the branding that they brought back to introduce AAA. Make it Survivor Series Worlds Collide. And you don't necessarily have to get rid of War Games. You can make War Games the spectacle rather than the main focus. And I think War Games still works. Anyways, these are just some thoughts I had. These are just some storylines that I was playing around with. These are just, hey, can I make this work with the champions we have right now? Even though some of them aren't the champions that I want, absolutely. I've rambled for quite long enough right now. I know Survivor Series is something that divides opinion because there's like 5 or 6 different versions of Survivor Series as you go through your history. Let me know what your favorite type of Survivor Series layout is. Is it the 4-on-4s? Is it the 5-on-5s? Was it the Deadly Games tournament? Did you like Battle of the Brands the first time? Do you like the fact that it's War Games right now? Hypothetically, it might not even be War Games this year because that's not on any of the branding. Anyways, but that's just a marketing nightmare, and that's not anything that's been confirmed to us in any way, shape, or form. I've spoken for quite long enough now. I've been Spaz, your YWC reality check. Subscribe up there, talk down there, start a conversation, keep all of these conversations going. Don't be a stranger. I'll talk to each and every last one of you later, but for right now, I am tagging out. Bye, guys.